What an absolutely wild day of football today. Big upsets, big busts, and for the first time all year, Jonathan Taylor did not carry your team to victory, but come on, you're not panicking on Jonathan Taylor, I hope. But here are the players you should be panicking on. I am freaking out about these guys, and if they're on your fantasy team, yeah, you need to be panicked right now. Let's start with Rome Odunze, a guy who was looking like a league winner to start the season, get you a big fat 0 today. 0 fantasy points, really. Look, had a touchdown. Yes, the throw was behind him, but that's one you can catch. Maybe he should have caught. But it's not just this game here where he got totally shut down by, look, I've said it. Cincinnati, for as bad as the defense is, they have a great corner in DJ Turner. But he got shut down here. But look at it even since the bye week. He's now had 3 or 4 games since the bye week with 34 or less yards, and he's yet to score a touchdown since the bye week. You got to be getting nervous here about Rome Odunze. Was just one of these guys that just got off to a hot start this year, and now he's cooling off. What are we going to see from this Bears offense going forward? What are we going to get from Caleb Williams? Look, Rome Odunze is still a good player. You're still probably starting Rome Odunze, but maybe we're not going to get league winner Rome Odunze this year. And look, if this keeps going, we might not even get fantasy relevant Rome Odunze. Let's hope things turn around really soon. But you know what? I'm not banking on things turning around for DK Metcalf. Well, what was I thinking here? Thinking this guy could be a boom this week? 2 catches for 6 yards? Really? This is a guy called one of the biggest busts all offseason. Said, do not draft this guy. And then what do? Say he could boom this week because, hey, the Colts missing their stud corner, Charvarius Ward, should be an absolute shootout here. Instead, somehow the Steelers defense showed up and shut down the Colts. But, man, what DK Metcalf, this is terrible here. And he hasn't even really been that good this year. He's had like one big play, some touchdowns. That's pretty much it. Everything I thought that was going to happen with DK Metcalf this year is happening. Yeah, he's the number 1 target here, but he's in this offense with Arthur Smith, the Steelers. This is hardly any upside here. Look, he'll still have some good games going forward, but man, this is the DK Metcalf I expected to see. What was I thinking putting this guy on the booms? And by the way, if you want to know just how bad it was for Odunze and Metcalf this week, they were outscored by wide receivers like Jordan Watkins, Sky Moore, who now plays for the San Francisco 49ers, and Mitchell Tinsley, who, if you've never heard of him, is a wide receiver for the Bengals. Yeah, just brutal here for these guys. But for as bad as they were, the biggest bust of the entire fantasy season, non-injury bust, of course, has to be Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Here it was, Travis Hunter on IR, good matchup against the Raiders. Let's get it. Let's have that big game. And what did we see? 3 catches for 55 yards. Look, he was being out-targeted by Parker Washington and Dyami Brown in this game. And then Dyami Brown left with an injury, and then he was continuing to be out-targeted by Parker Washington. And then to make matters worse here, where he wasn't even having a good game, he suffered an ankle injury, tried to come back in the game, and then left the game and never returned. And now we've got to be worried about the high ankle sprain. But look, maybe you're not worried about the high ankle sprain because if he's out, at least you don't have to think about starting him. But man, even if he plays, how good can we feel? This was supposed to be the spot against the Raiders with no Travis Hunter, and nothing changed. He was still terrible in this game before the injury, and the injury came late in the 4th quarter. It wasn't like he missed half the game or anything. Brian Thomas Jr. almost certainly going to go down as the biggest non-injury bust of 2025. But I hate to say it, right behind him might be Nico Collins. I mean, look, he wasn't terrible today. 7 catches, 75 yards on 11 targets, but now we're probably staring at a week of Davis Mills after CJ Stroud suffered that concussion in this game. And I guess on the bright side, Davis Mills did target him here, but this is a guy who hasn't even had any upside this year. You look at it, he's only got 1 game where he's gone over 16 fantasy points, and he's only hit 20 fantasy points once all season long. This is a guy you've drafted late 1st round, early 2nd round, and has not come close to paying that off. And I don't think he's going to. This situation, it's just not as good this year for whatever reason for Nico Collins. I guess it's the new offensive coordinator. I don't know what else to blame it on. Nico Collins, he'll be fine. If you got him, you got to start him probably, but he's more like a wide receiver 2 than a wide receiver 1 this year. Hey, real quick before I get to the rest of the list here, just want to say if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please do us a big favor. Hit that subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it. We are trying to get to 100K subscribers by the end of the season. It's not looking good for us. We need all the help we can get. So if you're enjoying the content, take 1 second and subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. And then just when you thought you had a tight end 1 in Tucker Kraft, oh no, here comes the injuries, a non-contact knee injury, and Not sounding good. It is sounding like the dreaded A word. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it ends with CL, which would be season ending here for Tucker Kraft. Just absolutely brutal here. A guy that looked like, again, a waiver wire or late round hero at the tight end position. Probably done for the season. We don't know for sure, but that's what it sounds like. And look, George Kittle, where has this guy been? Okay, lost him for 4 weeks there with the hamstring injury, came back, thought, okay, I got a top 5, top 3 tight end, and you haven't had that at all. In the 3 games since he's come back from injury, he's got 8 catches for 75 yards total. That's over 3 games. Okay, he does have 1 touchdown, thankfully, but man, this guy has not been producing the way we wanted to. And if you're like, well, it'll be better when Brock Purdy comes back, it doesn't sound like Brock Purdy's even close. Kyle Shanahan today said he wasn't even close to playing this week. We might not see Brock Purdy this year. It might be Mac Jones rest of the season. Look, it's George Kittle. I want to buy into the talent, but this is now a 3-game sample where he has not been heavily involved the way we saw when Brock Purdy was the quarterback. If it's Mac Jones rest of the season, George Kittle, yeah, you're still starting him, but he's probably not going to be a top 5 tight end. And we got our first look at Tyler Shough today, and yeah, it wasn't great. I would argue the offense looked worse here. Barely had 20 minutes time of possession, but I really want to talk about the receivers here, specifically Chris Olave, who was looking like one of these guys you could just plug in as a wide receiver too. You knew the floor was there. You knew the volume was there. He also had potential upside, but you look at it this week, Rashid Shaheed, 9 targets. Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson tied for second with 4, only 1 more target than Brandon Cooks. Look, it's a small sample. It's only 1 game here, but this is the first game without Spencer Rattler. If this is going to be the target distribution, if Rashid Shaheed is going to be his preferred target, it's going to flip this entire wide receiver room here as far as fantasy goes. So I don't want to go full on panic yet with Chris Olave, because again, it was just 1 game, but this isn't like a matchup where the Rams have a shutdown corner who could like take Chris Olave out of the game the way the Bengals did with Rome Odunze. They don't have anybody like that. So I'm a little nervous here. Let's see what happens next week. You probably still are starting Chris Olave, but man, if we see this kind of usage again next week, we are absolutely in full-fledged panic mode. And I think it's time we start getting nervous about Keenan Allen. This seemed like a good spot against a team that played a ton of zone, didn't really have a good outside corner, and he had 5 targets, which was tied with Quentin Johnson. Of course, Quentin Johnson had the touchdown here, but look, tied with Oronde Gadsden in targets, 2 less than Ladd McConkey, only 2 catches for 41 yards. And now you look at it, he's had less than 44 yards in 3 of the last 4 games. Is he starting to slow down? Is it the emergence of Gadsden? Is it everything here? I don't know, but Keenan Allen, this last month here, he's had that 1 good game, and the other 3 were not very good. Starting to get nervous about Keenan Allen. I'm sure he'll still have some good games the rest of the season because he's in this Chargers offense, but probably going to be much, much more volatile than he was at the start of the season. And as you got J.K. Dobbins, it's just absolute frustration. Not only is R.J. Harvey the pass catching back here, which is robbing of upside, but R.J. Harvey keeps scoring touchdowns, and J.K. Dobbins seems allergic to the end zone. Now, I will say, even though Dobbins did have a down game this week, and he's had kind of a bad to mediocre stretch, I would say, he does have at least 15 carries and 61 yards in 3 straight games. So it's not like he's not getting the work. It's not like he's been bad. And this was a brutal matchup, right? We talked about it. I did not have J.K. Dobbins ranked very high this week on the road against the Texans. I still think J.K. Dobbins will be okay rest of the season, but man, with Harvey getting the passing down work and somehow scoring every single game, the upside for J.K. Dobbins has just been capped. I don't see why that would change. And I hate to say it, but I'm starting to get nervous about Ted McMillan, the rookie wide receiver for Carolina with Bryce Young. You look at it, in the last 3 games he's played with Bryce Young, he has 10 total catches and hasn't topped 46 yards in any of those games. He had that 1 nice game a couple weeks ago with Andy Dalton, but with Bryce Young, it's just not there. Man, Bryce Young, what is, like, where is the development? Come on, Bryce Young. They're just not putting up a ton of passing yards here. Rico Dowdle looks awesome. I mean, they're just running the football because why not? So I'm worried we may not see the Ted McMillan rookie breakout in the second half like we thought we would here, unless Bryce Young gets significantly better, which why would that happen? Or the Panthers stop running the football, which again, why would that happen? And then I think it might be time to give up on Xavier Worthy. I hate to say it, but I mean, we got to go with the tea leaves here. Okay, he did tie Rashee Rice for the team lead in targets with 7, but again, only 3 catches for 23 yards. This is 3 straight down games since Rashee Rice has come back. doesn't even really matter that he's like the number 2 target here, because so many of his targets just seem like prayers, right? It's like, yeah, he's targeted, but they're very low catchable type of passes. Like, they're very difficult throws. He's not getting those easy throws he was getting earlier in the year before Rashee Rice came back. Now those all go to Rashee Rice and sometimes Travis Kelce. So, you know, I've been saying like Xavier Worthy's still worth a flex. It feels like he should have upside in this offense, but does he really? I'm not so sure. And there's so much for Tyrone Tracy being the lead back in New York. My goodness, not only did they split snaps, basically him and Singletary played the same number of snaps essentially here, but you look at it, Singletary had 3 more carries and was also significantly better than Tyrone Tracy. And even in the passing game where you think like, okay, Tyrone Tracy, that's where he makes his living in the passing game. Sure, Tyrone Tracy had 4 targets, but Singletary still had 2. He only had 1 more catch here. This was my worry. Like when they drafted Cam Skattebo, I said, Cam Skattebo is going to be the guy. He's better than Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy feels like the most replaceable, I shouldn't say the most, one of the most replaceable running backs in the NFL. And if Devin Singletary can outperform him, he is certainly replaceable. So if you dropped a bunch of fab to get Tyrone Tracy last week, or you burned a number 1 waiver claim, you got to be pretty nervous after what we saw this week. And then I do just want to say really quick, I'm not going to put the stats up or anything, but if you're still holding on to hope for Alvin Kamara, what are we even doing here? I mean, this is brutal. I said on the start sit video, no, I am not starting him. I am not starting Alvin Kamara. I'm not starting Alvin Kamara. You shouldn't be either. Look, Alvin Kamara had a great run, great for fantasy, but it looks like that run is over. This is 3 straight horrible games for Alvin Kamara. You cannot start this guy in fantasy anymore. All right, now let's get to some players that maybe let you down this week or maybe you're a little worried about, but I'm going to tell you, don't panic. They'll be fine. And let's start with Puka Nacua. And look, Puka Nacua was great this week, but if you saw that injury where he left the game with a chest injury, like me, you're probably thinking, oh, come on, not again here. But look, he came back on the sidelines. Now, he didn't go into the game, but he had his helmet on. He had his gloves on. I think they just didn't put him in because they were blowing the Saints out, and they're like, why do we need you out there, right? So I'm not worried about Puka Nacua. It looks like he's fine. It doesn't sound serious. Don't freak out if you got Puka. And same with Jahmyr Gibbs. I know this was a David Montgomery week this week, but come on. Jahmyr Gibbs gets a pass. Everybody gets a pass. He's a stud. He's going to be fine. Don't be freaking out here. And look, Ladd McConkey, sure, he was better than Keenan this week, but he took a backseat to QJ this week, which is kind of surprising. But this is not a good schematic matchup for Ladd McConkey. He's been so good recently. You can't be panicked here. Just one of those games. Move on. And if you're freaking out about Jordan Addison with J.J. McCarthy because you're like, oh my gosh, he barely had a game here, I'm going to say don't panic. At least McCarthy looked pretty good. I mean, he didn't throw for a ton of yards, but had a couple touchdowns, ran in a touchdown. At least he looked good. And the Vikings have arguably the best schedule rest of the season for wide receivers. So don't be freaking out on Jordan Addison here. I think he'll be better. And I will say I'm getting a little bit nervous about Tyler Warren, but I'm not ready to panic yet. But look, 4 catches, 53 yards last week, 5 catches, 26 yards this week. This is 2 games now where it's like, what's going on here? But come on, this guy's been so good all year. Got to give him a pass this week. If he's bad again next week, okay, now we're panicking. And sure, you saw more Jarrett Patterson this week than you wanted to if you have Kimani Vidal, and it was not a great game for Kimani Vidal at all this week in a very good spot against the Titans. But again, come on, this guy's had 2 monster games. Okay, and he's had 2 down games. He's Kimani Vidal. This guy should not be your every week RB1 that you're counting on to lead your team to glory. Give him a pass this week. We've already seen him be great in this offense. Not worried here. And then finally, we saw a big step back this week from quarterbacks like Drake May and Daniel Jones. But come on, it happens here. They're going to be fine. They've been great all season long. You can't just freak out because of 1 down game. I mean, look at Caleb Williams. He had like 2 or 3 down games and then exploded against the Bengals. These guys have been too good all year to be panicking about. They're going to be just fine. All right, there you go. Those are the players you need to be panicking about as we head into week 10. But look, we got way more videos that you need to help you dominate and win. Make sure you stay tuned to Fantasy Endgame all week long to win your matchup.